afternoon, everybody. Welcome to ActSafe Safety Association WorkSafeBC 2025 Rate Consultation Information Session. So our intention today is to create a safe space for exchanging knowledge and supporting each other in solidarity. We welcome questions throughout this morning's workshop, but we'll also leave time during the question and answer period at the end of this session. ActSafe Safety Association would like to acknowledge and honor that our workplace and classrooms are located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Kikite, Stalo, Hokimin, Tsleil-Waututh, Chemainus peoples. And if you would like to learn more, you can go to native-land.ca. A little bit of housekeeping. This session will be approximately 60 minutes, allowing for open conversation and a Q&A period to follow. All participants will be muted. If you have any questions, please use the chat feature to submit your questions. For your convenience, the closed captioning function is available on this webinar. Simply click Settings and then Accessibility tab under Closed Captioning. Click Checkout box to enable. If you have any questions, please advise our team in the chat room. A recording of this webinar will be available on our website. A link will be emailed to you within a week after the webinar. So today we're going to be discussing how industries and firms are classified, rates and classification structure, for motion picture, organize special events, performing arts, live performance venue, and an overview of recent claim trends within the industry, and a live question and answer period. So today we have Disha Jaswal from WorkSafeBC talking, and she is currently working as a safety consultant with WorkSafeBC. She's been working as a safety consultant for 14 years, and her passion began with healthcare, and she's now applied her expertise within the motion picture and live performance industries. Kiran Bhatti, who's a manager of class and rate modification with WorkSafeBC, and Kiran manages the class and rates modification program at WorkSafeBC. She and her team work closely with senior leaders and the actuarial team to ensure WorkSafeBC delivers fair and equitable rates to each industry. And myself, Maria Alexander, I'm the head of health, and I've been the head of health and safety departments for films and series for Netflix, Paramount, Apple, and Legendary Pictures, and I am an ActSafe safety advisor. So a little bit about ActSafe. We are a not-for-profit health and safety organization supporting British Columbia's arts and entertainment industries. And since 1998, we've been serving our industries by providing resources and training to employers, workers, and supervisors to achieve a health and safety workplace. We are always here to provide information relevant of best practices around health and safety in the arts and entertainment industries in British Columbia. Our vision is to have the safest and healthiest arts and entertainment workplace in the world. And our mission is to prevent and eliminate workplace injury, illness, and death by providing world-class occupational health and safety well-being programs to employers, supervisors, and workers in the BC arts and entertainment industry. And our core visions are safety, education, accessibility, collaboration, and innovation. And now I'll turn the presentation over to Kiran.
Thank you. My name is Kiran Bhatti, and I'm the manager for rate and class at WorkSafeBC. Today, I'll be talking a little bit about our rates in general and how industries and firms are classified, how industry insurance rates are set, and hoping to answer any questions that all of you may have. Okay. Thank you. So this slide shows you some of our key results for 2023. And when we are talking about results, the reason we're talking about 2023 results as opposed to something more current is because 2023 is the last full year of results that we have that go into and influence the 2025 rates. So please keep that in mind if your claim cost performance or if your industry's claim cost performance has dramatically changed only in 2024, it's not going to impact your 2025 rates. And the other thing that I want to point out from this slide is that our average base rate, so the rate for the system as a whole, will remain the same at 1.55%, and it's been at that level since 2018. Now, does that mean that your premium rate or even your industry's premium base rate is going to remain the same? No, that's not necessarily true. So we're only talking about averages here for the system as a whole. And as has been the case always, when the average rate remains the same, many employers will be seeing rate decreases and others will be seeing increases, and minority of firms will see little or no change in their rates at all. Next slide. So this is another slide that I wanted to share with you, as it provides us with valuable historical perspective to view the 2025 average premium rate, and then it also shows us our history for almost last 25 years. So as we can see from the green line, the average base rate has been consistently below the blue average cost rate line since 2007. And this shows us that our favorable investment returns has kept rates below the cost to run the system since then. So the system has been costing us more than what we've been able to charge the employers, and that's because of our investment returns. Looking at the overall chart now, we do see a recent uptick in total cost to 2015 levels, starting in 2021. But for now, it appears to be running flat. However, when you consider the data that we're observing concerning complex injury claims, the potential for future total cost rate increases remains a significant possibility. But for now, the good news is that for 2025, our average base rate will continue to remain flat at 1.55%. And the last message that I want to tease out of this slide concerns our administration costs. As the red line at the bottom of the graph shows, the cost rate has remained consistently flat for the last 20 plus years, playing no role in the changes to the base rates shown above. In fact, this rate, a portion of the total cost rate, is at an all-time low of 0.42%. Next slide, please. So now let's look at our classification and rate structure. Next slide. So in terms of how we classify industries or how we set rates, we first look at BC's economy as a whole, and then we divide all of the industries in BC into subsectors. We have into sectors, and we have 7 sectors, and those sectors are then further divided into subsectors. And then firms are placed together with peers and competitors in classification units. And classification units based on expectation of similar costs or similarity of business undertaking are then put into industry groups as needed. And then industry groups are placed into rate groups, which is what we use to set base rates. So when industries start having higher or lower costs, they're moved to more appropriate rate groups. And we'll talk a little bit more in detail about this in one of the upcoming slides. Next slide, please. So these are all of the sectors, and so 7 large industrial sectors, as I said, and 24 subsectors are represented in this slide. Next slide. So now let's paint a picture of our insurance model. As I said before, the classification unit is the starting point, and it's shown here as a golden block at the bottom of this image. Firms are placed together with peers and competitors into those industry classification units. Most industries, though, are not large enough for us to calculate the insurance rates on their own, so they're gathered into one of our 235 industry groups. 35 industry groups, such as those for forestry, general, retail, hospitals, etc., are large enough to become independent rate groups. The rest are placed into rate group band that matches their claim cost rate, and the scale on the right-hand side of the slide shows you the range for each of the 20 bands. So together, the 35 industry-specific rate groups and 20 rate group bands represent the 55 rate groups used to set base rates. And that would be it if nothing changed ever. However, as you all know, that industries evolve over time and not at the same pace or in the same way. So each year we review the industry groups in each rate group to make sure they continue to share similar costs. Those with higher costs move to a higher risk rate group band with higher insurance rates. And this ensures that industry-based rates are commensurate with their risks and over time cover their costs to the system. Higher industry rates also help employers become more aware of the cost of injuries in their industry and prompt interest around how those injuries can be prevented. And of course, industries with lower costs are moved to lower risk rate groups with lower insurance rates. Next slide, please. Now, what impacts our premium rates? So there are three key drivers that impact insurance rates or premium rates: number of claims and that an industry has, and then claim costs. Claim costs include healthcare, short-term disability, vocational rehabilitation, long-term disability, and survivors benefits, and our investment returns. Next slide, please. So now looking at your industry, this slide shows us the distribution of payroll for the entertainment industry. So as we can see that the large chunk, almost 68%, is for motion picture, commercial or television production. And then it's followed by performing arts at 14%. And then 11% of the payroll belongs to organizing or conducting special events, and then followed by a live performance venue at 7%. Next slide, please. So this slide shows us the rate details for motion picture, commercial or television production classification unit. This industry is large enough and it is its own rate group. The rate group is called JE, and then that rate group only consists this industry, so it is 100% of the payroll and 100% of the claim costs. We can see that the costs have remained on an upward trend, increase in costs, decrease in surplus, and increase in HSA levy has led to a rate increase this year. The blue line here shows the charge rate, which is the rate that's charged to your industry by WorkSafeBC. And the orange line shows us the cost rate, which is what your industry is costing the system. The gap between the two usually depends on if your industry is in a surplus or a deficit position. So your industry is in a deficit position, and that's why we're needing to charge a little bit higher than the cost to cover for the deficit as well. Next slide, please. So on this slide, we're looking at organizing or conducting special events and live performance venue. Both of these classifications have similar rates. So I've represented them on the same slide. And they're both proposed to be moved to rate group 5 for the year 2025, so the upcoming rate year. And the base rate has increased due to increased costs as well. Next slide. Now looking at performing arts classification unit. So performing arts was moved to a lower risk rate group for 2023, and it's facing a slight rate increase this year as compared to last year. Next slide. This slide shows us the 10 years of history of ActSafe funding. So the orange bar shows us the budget, and the blue bar shows us the cost charged into the rates. Okay, next slide. So now we've talked about base rates. So moving on to net rates, I want to go over our experience rating program a little bit. Next slide, please. So as I just said that we've spoken about base rates, but base rates is just a starting point for the premium that any firm pays. WorkSafeBC's experience rating program can give you an up to a 50% discount or charge an up to 100% surcharge, depending on your safety performance over time. So firms whose claim costs are the same as those of other similar sized firms are considered average, and they pay about industry's base rate. But if a firm's performing better than other firms in its industry, then it will obtain an experience rating discount, so we'll have to pay less than the base rate. Or if a firm is performing worse, meaning costing more than the average, then it will obtain a surcharge and will end up paying more than the industry's base rate. Next slide, please. So how does experience rating work? So first we look at your claim costs for the past 3 years. And when I say 3 years, that means 2021, 2022, 2023, when we're doing your 2025 calculations. And again, the reason is that we do not have the full 2024 data by the time we're doing the calculations. So we use the paid costs of claims for those 3 years up to June 30th, 2024 to do the calculations for 2025. And everybody's preliminary experience rating notice or preliminary net rate is available on your employer's account. You are able to see what we think your experience rating outcome is going to be for 2025 on your employer's account. If you don't have an employer's account, you can sign up for one and then you can see that information there. And then once we've looked at the claim costs for past 3 years, we consider the size of your firm in terms of payroll, and then we compare your claim cost per dollar of payroll to the average of your industry's rate group. And then again, if you have lower than average claim costs, you will receive higher experience rating discounts and vice versa. Next slide, please. So for example, if we look at a production with approximately $10 million in payroll with a base rate of about 2%, they would normally pay $200,000, but they could pay as little as $100,000 or as much as $400,000, depending on their safety record over time. So that's a difference of almost $300,000 for a production with approximately $10 million in payroll, depending on their safety record over time. So now I will pass it on to Disha to speak about some claim cost statistics.
Thank you, Karen. My name is Disha, and I am an industry and program specialist from the Prevention and Program Services Department. I'm going to be going through some graphs that will portray statistical information about injury rates, claims cost, accident types, etc. Next slide, please. So the first 4 slides will be looking at injury rates. So they're lined graphs, and they'll be focusing on each CU. The first CU we'll be looking at is the Performing Arts CU 761030. And as you can see, the injury rate is on the left-hand side, and on the bottom, we do have our years 2019 to 2023. The orange line represents the injury rate for performing arts, and the blue line represents the injury rate for all industries within BC. If you're wondering what the definition of injury rate is, it would be the number of time loss claims per 100 person years of covered employment, where 100 person years is equal to 100 employees working in that year. And if you're further wondering what person years means, that's the estimated number of persons working all year, whether it's part-time or full-time. And it's based on gross payrolls, which are submitted by employers and matching wage rate data. Next slide, please. So here we have the Organizing and Special Events CU 761027. We have the injury rate on the left-hand side and the years again on the bottom from 2019 to 2023. And as you can see, we do have the injury rate substantially lower than the all BC rate. However, it is slightly increasing post-COVID. Next slide, please. So here we have the live performance venue 761011. And after COVID, we do see that decrease again, but the injury rate is substantially increasing, and it has surpassed the all BC injury. So that's something to keep in mind for the live performance venue CU. Next slide, please. So for the first time in many years, the motion picture rate is well below the BC rate, definitely a big achievement. However, this rate is slightly rising, but we are hoping for it to continue to be below the all BC injury rate as the years continue. Next slide, please. So now we're going to be looking at the total number of days lost. So on the left-hand side, you'll see the total numbers of days lost, and on the bottom, you'll see the years from 2019 to 2023. If you're wondering what the total number of days lost, the definition of that is the total number of short-term disability work days paid in the year, regardless of the year of injury. For the performing arts CU, you could see that total number of days lost did decrease in 2021 to 169, but it has been increasing ever since. So that is the trend that we are seeing for this particular CU. Next slide, please. So here we have the total number of days lost for organizing and special events. In 2019, you will see that the total number of days lost was 1,356. And during COVID, it went down and decreased to 110 total numbers of days lost, and it has been increasing ever since. Next slide, please. So here we have the live performance venue 761011. And we do see that in 2019, there was 2,189 total numbers of days lost, and it decreased during COVID times to 1,189. And then it goes down to a negative number over here in 2021, which is minus 137. And if you're wondering what these negative values are, they're caused by relief cost. So the costs were reversed and charged due to pre-existing conditions. Next slide, please. So trends we see in the motion picture CU 763025 is that in year 2020, there was an increase of 39,625 total numbers of days lost. And then it did decrease in year 2021. It has been fluctuating. The total number of days lost has been fluctuating throughout the years as it increases and decreases. Next slide, please. So here we're going to be going into some pie charts where we're looking at the top 5 injury types by counts and by costs for each CU. So starting off with the performing arts CU 761030, the top 5 injury types are listed here. So this pie chart represents the top 5 incident count. This chart shows that approximately 50% of the incident counts occur from struck-bys, fall from elevations, and other bodily motions. When observing these graphs, it's important to keep in mind that the portions in the graph sizes, they may seem larger than the actual percentage, and that's due to the fact that there are other injuries that are not captured by these statistics. So these graphs only consider the top 5 injury types. If you're wondering what other bodily motions mean, so that refers to an injury that's resulted from free bodily motion or conscious movement of body. Free bodily motion or conscious movement include bending, climbing, crawling, reaching, twisting, running, sitting, standing, walking, sustained viewing, static posture with or without application of force to an object as well. And if you're wondering what struck by means, struck by is the injury resulting from forcible contact or impact between the injured person and the source of injury, where the motion producing the contact is primarily that of the source of the injury rather than the person. So this would include struck by a falling object, flying object, swinging or slipping object, struck by rolling, sliding, or falling objects on the floor or ground level. As well. Next slide, please. So here we have costs for performing arts CU. In this claims pie chart, falls and elevations represent 43% claims cost, overexertion represents 16%, and the unknown accounts for 7%. And the definition of claims cost is a sum of all healthcare payments, short-term disability payments, vocational rehabilitation payments, long-term disability reserves. Next slide, please. So here we have the organizing and special events CU 761027. This pie chart represents the top 5 types of incidents that have occurred by percentage. And majority of the incidents were fall on same level 33% and struck by at 20%. Just a quick note, struck against, the definition for that would be where an injury is resulted from a forcible contact or impact between the injured person, the source of injury, where the motion producing of the contact is primarily of that injured person. So that would include, bumping into objects, stepping on objects, kicking objects, and being pushed or thrown into or against objects. Next slide, please. So here we have the organizing and special events, the CU here. And as you can see, 53% of claims costs represent MVIs, so motor vehicle incidents, followed by 11% fall from same level, and 10% of claims costs are related to violence. So an example of falling on the same level within the CU would be something like operators and attendants in an amusement park tripping over cords or objects on floors, walkways, and or ground surfaces. And an example of falling from elevation from the CU would be construction trade helpers and laborers falling from elevated surfaces or equipment, such as falling from a ladder. Next slide, please. So here we have the live performance venue 761011. And this pie chart shows that 29% of injuries are categorized as overexertion, followed by 24% struck bys, and then from falls from elevation, 11%. And again, struck by, that means being struck by a flying, falling, moving object, equipment, or tool. And struck against, just a quick reminder, when a worker's body collides with another object due to their own movement. Next slide, please. Okay, and here we have live performance venue 761011. And this pie chart, 24% of incidents reported are categorized as involuntary motion, followed by fall from elevation, 21%. An involuntary movement occurs when you move your body in an uncontrollable and unintended way. Next slide, please. And here we have the motion pictures CU 763025. This pie chart represents that, that approximately 50% of injuries within the CU include overexertion, which is 20%, followed by struck bys, 16%, followed by falls on the same level, 14%. Next slide, please. And this pie chart looks at costs within the motion pictures CU. 25% of injuries are related to overexertion. 17% of incidents are categorized as fall on the same level. Next slide, please. So here we're going to be looking at bar graphs and in the next couple of slides here. And just to start off with, we're going to be looking at the top 5 claims by occupations in each CU. And on the left-hand side of these bar graphs, you'll see occupation types, and the bottom you'll see the percentage of claims that have been submitted from years 2019 to 2023. So as you can see, other performers, there were 24% of claims that were submitted between this time period, followed by dancers at 21%. Other technical coordinating occupations and motion pictures, broadcasting and performing arts at 12%, audio and video recording technicians 6%, and janitors, caretakers, and building superintendents at 6%. So if you're wondering what other performers include, so this occupational group includes circus performers, magicians, models, puppeteers, and other performers not elsewhere classified, such as stunt performers. And this excludes actors and comedians, dancers, musicians, singers. And if you're wondering what other technical and coordinating occupation, motion pictures, broadcasting, and performing arts means, this group includes a range of technical coordinating and supervising workers, which coordinate and perform specific activities for television, radio, and motion picture productions, news, broadcasts, theater, and stage productions, and the other live or recorded productions. And it does not include any audio, video recording technicians, broadcast technicians, film and video camera operators, lighting designers. Next slide, please. So here we have a pie chart showing young worker claim counts. So we can see that 7 out of the 33 Claim counts were from young workers, and young worker claims, which the definition for that would be the number of short-term disability, long-term disability, fatal claims that were submitted by people aged 15 to 24 years of age. Next slide, please. So here we're looking at occupation types on the left-hand side again, and this is for organizing and special events CU. And we can see that conference and event planners, there's 13% of conference and event planners that had submitted claims from years 2019 to 2023, followed by supporting occupation and motion pictures, broadcasting, and photography and performing arts. And then 6% construction, trade helpers and laborers, followed by operators and attendants, amusement parks, and recreation and sports. And then the last, we have support occupations and accommodations, travel and facility setup services. So support occupations and motion pictures. This occupational group would include workers who perform support duties related to broadcasting and other broadcasting and to production of motion pictures and the performing arts. So it does not include any audio and video recording technicians, broadcast technicians, film or video operators. Next slide, please. And here we have the young worker claim counts again, and this is for the organizing and special events CU. So we can see that 17 out of 64 claims were submitted by young workers. Next slide, please. So here, this is the occupation types for a live performance venue. And we can see that supporting occupations in motion pictures, broadcasting, photography, and performing arts, there was 36% of claims submitted, followed by other technical and coordinating occupations in motion pictures, broadcasting, and performing arts, followed by carpenters, bartenders, and actors and comedians. Next slide, please. So here we have young worker claim counts for live performance venues. And we can see that 21 out of 118 claim counts were submitted by young workers within the CU. Next slide, please. So here we have the top 5 claim types for motion pictures, and we have the occupation on the left-hand side again, and we can see that 40% of supporting occupations in motion pictures, broadcasting, photography, and performing arts were submitted for percentage of claims from 2019 to 2023, followed by other technical and coordinating occupation, which was 15%, and then followed by carpenters, transport truck drivers, and then last but not least, the film and video camera operators. Next slide, please. So here we have the young worker claim count for motion pictures, 763025. And as we can see here, that 150 out of 2,409 claim counts were young worker claims that were submitted. And that's all for me today. I'll pass it on to Marit.
Thank you, Disha. So now I'm going to open up the question and answer period. So if anybody has any questions they would like to ask our panel today, please submit it in chat. Okay, so we have a question called from Barbara. Film production companies usually form new companies for each project. When that's the case, how do you determine the premiums? Do you go back to the umbrella company?
It depends how they're registered. If the employer is the umbrella company, then it would be based on the umbrella company. If the employer is the new company that you've established, then it will be based on that. So if there's a specific example, then you can reach out to us and then we can explain in detail.
Thank you, Kieran. Nicole would like to know, can you remind me of where we can view these stats?
Hi, Nicole. I can actually provide you the link to where you can find these stats, and you can actually pull them yourselves according to what you're looking for in terms of injury type, what years you were looking at. So I can just put that into the chat right now if you'd like.
Thank you, Disha. Jose would like to know, hi, when you consider struck by in motion picture, what are the number of incidents of struck by tense when moving, loading, unloading, deploying, and striking down?
I don't have the actual number, but I can also look that up for you. Or you can also look it up yourself in the link that I provide. So that would be specifically for your CU.
Thank you, Disha. So Nicole says, thank you for this information. It's really helpful to understand the injury rates and classifications in RCU.
And Merit, if anybody has any questions later on, which they don't think of now, please feel free to reach us at rates@worksafebc.com.
So Christina has a question. I have a question about one of the earlier slides Kieran presented. I noticed there is a larger difference between the cost rate and charge rate for, I think it was 2024, than in the earlier years. Can you explain the reason behind this charge? Or behind the change, sorry.
Yeah, so I'm not sure which classification unit you're referring to, but in general, I can answer that the reason between the cost rate and the charge rate could be due to factors. One of the important factors and that it usually is because of is the amortization of balances. And what I mean by that is that so you must have heard, in the media or what have you, that WorkSafeBC has a surplus. So while that is true, we are in a surplus position, we maintain balances at an industry level, which means is that each industry you can think of has its own bank account. And sometimes because how we set rates is like what we think this industry is going to cost us for 2025. So obviously that's not true to the cent, and sometimes industries end up paying us less, and sometimes they end up paying us more. So if they end up paying us less, they get into a deficit position, which means that they owe money to the system, and then that money is charged to them over a 5-year rolling period for the next 5 years. So it's amortized over 5 years. And then if they paid more in a given year, then they may be in a surplus position, which means they have extra money within the system, and that money is applied to their rates for the next 5 years or rolling 5-year period again, and then they have to pay a little bit less than their cost rate. So that can be the difference. And there are some other factors that go in after the cost rate as well to determine the charge rate. The second factor is that WorkSafeBC has a policy where we don't allow a rate increase of normally more than 20% or even a rate decrease of more than 20%. And in special circumstances, we will let that go up to 30%. But if an industry's rate needs to be increased by more than 30%, we will not let that happen in 1 year, and then that will also add to the gap in between cost rate and charge rate. And another reason, since all of the employers here, you all participate in a health and safety association, which is ActSafe. And the association, and when that is the case, there is a levy that's attached to it that's built into your rates. And then depending on what that levy is from year to year, that also gets added into the cost rate to determine what rate we're going to charge you. So it could be one of those things that have caused the gap. The information is available on our website. So if you go to worksafebc.com/insurance, you can go type in your classification unit. And since this question is about motion picture, so you would type in 763025, and then it shows you the cost rate and all of the components that have gone into your charge rate or your base rate for last several years. Like when you just punch it in, it'll show you the numbers for 2024 and 2025, but you can go as far back as, I believe, 2021.
Thank you, Karen.
I will just put it in the chat where you can see that information that I just mentioned.
We'll wait a couple more minutes, and if nobody has any more questions, then we will finish the webinar. Maybe Karen, you could put that email in the chat for people who might like to reach out to you.
Yeah, I will put it in the chat.
Thank you. Okay. If anybody has any more questions, they can reach out to Karen directly at rates@worksafebc.com. And you can also reach out to us at ActSafe, and we can reach out to WorkSafe on your behalf if you like. So these are some of the resources that we have: the 2025 preliminary premium rates. And this page allows firms to find the rates of their classification unit, and the classification units for your membership are all seeing increases this year, and the data is in the table below. So the next steps are a follow-up email will be sent to you with a recording of this webinar and a list of the resources. And our next webinar we have coming up is tomorrow. It's on occupational first aid regulation changes from 12:30 to 2:30 p.m. And I will be presenting that, and Disha will be joining me as well. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming, and we look forward to seeing you at future events.
Thank you, everyone.